So my running back 2 in the 2023 class, also no surprise to anyone, is Jahmyr Gibbs. So if Bijan Robinson wasn't the top of the 2023 class, Jahmyr Gibbs probably would be. Now, he has a slightly different rookie profile in that if you currently are not interested in trading for DeAndre Swift, you should probably know that Jahmyr Gibbs is more DeAndre Swift than he is Jonathan Taylor. And you can see that right off the rip. He's not getting 50% of the team's overall opportunities in the rushing game year after year after year. He's getting around 30%. His rushing dominator, however, is higher in some years than Bijan Robinson's and most of Jonathan Taylor's because he's much more actively used in the receiving game. He's got a 40%, 46% and a 36% rushing dominator. His overall opportunities for the team, however, is slightly lower than both. There's a weird mix there between rushing opportunities and targets, but it kind of jumps off the page the minute you start looking at it. While he is more of 40% overall workload instead of 56% overall workload like Jonathan Taylor or Bijan Robinson throughout the entirety of their college career, he was the running back 1 for his team in points per game through the first 3 years. He only played 7 games in his first year, and he was a much more actively involved receiver. How can you see that, Pete? Target share tells the story to start with. Remember Jonathan Taylor finishing his career with his best target share season, and he's got 10%. Jahmyr Gibbs never dropped below 12%. You can also see it in his routes per game. Not only is he getting that volume, which I said made him a more actively utilized receiver than Jonathan Taylor, he is actively being targeted on those routes per game, and that's an important difference. Not only are you getting an excessively high workload in the receiving game relative to the running back position, you're also getting the targets when you get those opportunities to run a route. Now, the interplay between targets per route run and yards per route run and routes per game is debatable, but I think that rolls off the tongue. If you're getting above average usage, but you're not getting targeted as often, I think it's still important that you're actively being rolled out there to run route. Jahmyr Gibbs is a better receiver, or at least used as a more effective and active receiving weapon than Bijan Robinson. That's about the only advantage he has over Bijan Robinson, but he's really good at it. Well, remember the average for top 12 running backs was around 2.3. 2.3 adjusted yards per team attempt, doubling up their receiving yards in order to create that calculation. Jahmyr Gibbs is getting 1.6, 2, and then 2.1, and then 2 adjusted yards per team attempt in the final year. And that's doubling the receiving yards he's getting. Now, despite being used actively as a receiver and having wide receiver, or at least tight end-like receiving stats compared to a running back position, he's still getting low ADOT targets. You can't really expect as many receiving yards, which is why we double him up for running back in the first place. But it's still telling that despite being that more active receiver, he's not beating either Jonathan Taylor or premium running backs in adjusted yards per team attempt. He's not getting as many rushing yards to balance as Bijan Robinson is. That's why Bijan Robinson's adjusted yards per team attempts look insane. Jonathan Taylor's look premium. And Jahmyr Gibbs, you can see there are questions right there. That's why that number tends to have signal, because it adjusts the slider bar in rushing game, receiving game fairly effectively relative to other stats. You can also see that through his elusiveness rating. Remember, the average there is around 97% in their best season. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs easily beats that with full complements of volume in both seasons, although very different types of volume, where he was getting 16 opportunities a game instead of 20 in that first season, 4 of them being targets, and he's getting 167% elusiveness rating. Again, context is king when it comes to a performance stat, but that is still excessively high. But then you're getting 2 years where he's getting an 80 elusiveness rating and a 99 elusiveness rating. That final year being above average for running backs for 2 top 12 seasons, but still, it shows sort of some weakness relative to Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor in his pure elusiveness, whatever PFF is measuring there, in terms of his ability to run, to find open spaces and take advantage of them. But his yards after contact per attempt number, solid across the board. So putting all that in context, you've got a running back who's used to co-opting huge amounts of volume, although not the level of volumes that you see with full 3-down workhorse running backs in the NFL or in college, but is fairly relatively effective in the rushing game, but below average from premium running backs like Jonathan Taylor and like Bijan Robinson this year, but definitely fits the bill when you look at his best season stats. Even if you ignore that first year, his elusiveness rating is still 99, which is above average for players with 2 top 12 seasons in the NFL. And even though there's a range of the worst performers or players that have bad stats but still went on to do great because stats have flaws, you can still say that being above the average is pretty good for a running back who's more of a receiver than a rusher. He's still pretty effective as a rusher, and you can see that in his yards after contact per attempt number. But the real story here is this is a DeAndre Swift. This is a guy who can be utilized as an effective weapon in the receiving game, and anyone drafting him in the NFL is going to see that clearly off the tape, and they're going to expect to use him that way. As long as you understand what you're expecting, you can say this is a premium player at the role that he plays, which is a game we play, not a game, but as a way we look at profiles of the wide receiver pretty often. Are they an X guy? Are they a slot guy? Manage expectations in terms of what they can do in the NFL based on their landing spot and their draft capital, since we know that any team looking at them is going to see that pretty clearly off the tape. Beyond that, it's just performance, and with these levels of volume performing that well relative to the best prospects that have come out from college to the NFL of a recent or even long-term memory, Jahmyr Gibbs looks really good. So thanks very much, and I will see you again in the next video.